The air was thick with dust and silence. A rusted steel door groaned open, its hinges protesting decades of secrecy. Inside, the dim light flickered across rows of gold bars, stacked like bricks of betrayal. 40 tons. Untouched. Unmarked. Unbelievable. For years, it was gone. Hidden. Stolen. Until one man found it. The camera panned slowly across the vault, each bar gleaming like a wound reopened. This wasn't just treasure. It was truth. It was history. It was the soul of a nation, buried beneath lies and locked behind power. And now it was back. The voice cuts in, calm, resolute, almost reverent. This gold was never lost. It was taken. And today, we take it back. Outside, the streets of Ouagadougou stir. Word spreads like wildfire. Phones buzz. Radios crackle. Mothers weep. Young men raise fists. The people of Burkina Faso, long silenced, long robbed, begin to speak again. But behind the celebration, a darker question looms. Who took it? How did 40 tons of gold, the lifeblood of a struggling nation, vanish without a trace? And why did no one speak up until now? The vault may be open, but the story is just beginning. Because what Ibrahim Traoré uncovered wasn't just stolen gold. It was a conspiracy, a betrayal, a reckoning. And what happened next would shake the very foundations of power, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. But how did it vanish in the first place? And who was behind it? Burkina Faso has always glittered beneath the surface, not with skyscrapers or oil fields, but with veins of gold that run deep through its soil. For centuries, that gold was a promise of prosperity, of dignity, of self-determination. But that promise was never kept. Instead, foreign corporations carved up the land with contracts inked in boardrooms thousands of miles away. Multinational mining giants arrived with smiles and shovels, extracting billions while leaving behind dust, debt, and silence. The gold left the country in armored trucks and offshore accounts. What remained was poverty. The people watched as their leaders, suited, smiling, fluent in foreign tongues, signed away their birthright. They called it development. They called it investment. But the mines grew, and the schools crumbled. The hospitals emptied. The roads cracked. And the gold kept disappearing. It wasn't just theft. It was humiliation. Every ounce of gold that vanished was a reminder. Burkina Faso was rich, but its people were poor. And those in power, the elites who dined in Paris and whispered in Davos, made sure it stayed that way. The corruption wasn't hidden. It was flaunted. Lavish homes, imported cars, private jets, all funded by contracts that bled the nation dry. And when journalists asked questions, they were silenced. When citizens protested, they were ignored. Gold, once a symbol of pride, had become a curse. But beneath the surface, something was shifting. The youth, restless, educated, connected, began to ask louder questions. Why were foreign companies allowed to own the land? Why did the government refuse to audit the mines? Why did no one know where the gold was going? The tension grew. The silence cracked. And just when the country seemed powerless, a new leader emerged. They wore suits tailored in Geneva, spoke in polished English, and smiled for cameras with the ease of seasoned diplomats. But behind the charm was rot. For years, Burkina Faso's gold was siphoned not by bandits in the bush, but by men in boardrooms. Foreign mining conglomerates, backed by European financiers and shielded by legal loopholes, signed contracts that gave them near total control of the country's mineral wealth. The deals were dense, deliberately opaque, and always one-sided. One document, leaked by a whistleblower, revealed a clause that allowed a Canadian firm to export gold without declaring its full volume. Another showed how a French intermediary received millions in consulting fees for brokering a deal that left Burkina Faso with less than 5% of its own gold profits. These weren't just bad deals. They were engineered betrayals. And they were signed by the very people entrusted to protect the nation. Government officials, some elected, others appointed, became gatekeepers of exploitation. They flew first class to mining expos, toasted champagne with foreign investors, and returned home with briefcases full of promises. Promises that never reached the people. One former minister, caught on a hot mic, scoffed, "Let them dig. We get our cut either way." That clip, buried for years, resurfaced after the gold was found. It ignited fury, not just at the theft, but at the arrogance. These men didn't just steal. They believed they were untouchable. They built walls of bureaucracy, buried audits in red tape, and silenced dissent with intimidation. Journalists who asked too many questions were labeled unpatriotic. Activists who demanded transparency were accused of destabilizing the economy. And yet, the numbers told the story. In one fiscal year, Burkina Faso exported over $3 billion in gold. Less than 10% of that revenue reached public coffers. Schools remained underfunded. Hospitals lacked basic supplies. Roads crumbled. But the villas in Ouagadougou's elite neighborhoods grew larger. The cars got flashier. The silence got louder. Foreign corporations, meanwhile, played their part with surgical precision. They sponsored charity events, built token infrastructure, and flooded the media with ads touting partnership and progress. But behind the PR was a ruthless calculus. Extract as much as possible, as quietly as possible. One executive, speaking off-record to a European journalist, said, "Burkina Faso is a gold mine, literally. And they don't even know what they're sitting on." But someone did. Ibrahim Traoré had watched this machine operate for years. He saw how contracts were signed in secret, how audits were delayed indefinitely, how the same names kept appearing on both sides of the deals. He knew the system wasn't broken, it was working exactly as designed. And he knew it had to be dismantled. The network was vast. Politicians, corporate reps, middlemen, even foreign diplomats, all connected by a web of profit and silence. But they shared one fatal flaw. They believed no one would ever challenge them. They believed the people would stay quiet. They believed the gold would stay hidden. But their arrogance would be their undoing. He was not born into power. He was born into purpose. Ibrahim Traoré grew up in a modest home in the heart of Burkina Faso, a land rich in culture, resilience, and buried potential. From a young age, he watched his country bend under the weight of foreign interests. He saw the gold trucks roll past villages with no electricity. He saw leaders speak of sovereignty while signing away the soil beneath their feet. But Traoré didn't complain. He trained. Military school sharpened his discipline, but it was the streets that shaped his fire. He studied strategy, history, and the anatomy of betrayal. He learned how empires were built and how they fell. And he vowed that one day, Burkina Faso would no longer kneel. He rose quickly through the ranks, not because of connections, but because of conviction. His peers called him the quiet storm. Calm in demeanor, relentless in action. He refused bribes. He questioned orders. He spoke of dignity in rooms where silence was currency. When the country teetered on the edge, plagued by insecurity, corruption, and foreign manipulation, Traoré stepped forward. Not with a speech, but with a stand. He rejected the old guard. He refused to be a puppet. And when he took power, he made one thing clear. Burkina Faso's resources would no longer be for sale. Foreign envoys tried to charm him. Corporations offered deals. Diplomats whispered warnings. But Traoré didn't flinch. He spoke of the ancestors who fought for freedom. He spoke of the children who deserved a future. And he spoke of the gold, not as profit, but as promise. He ordered audits. He demanded transparency. He walked into meetings with no entourage, no script, just a fire that couldn't be bought. The people noticed. Young men painted murals of him on city walls. Mothers named their sons after him. The streets buzzed with something Burkina Faso hadn't felt in years: hope. But hope is dangerous to those who profit from despair. As Traoré pushed deeper into the mining contracts, resistance grew. Files disappeared. Officials stalled. Threats surfaced. Still, he pressed on, because he knew the truth was out there. And then came the tip-off that would change everything. The conference room was cold, sterile, and silent, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. Ibrahim Traoré sat at the head of the table, flanked by aides with folders thick as bricks. Across from him, the mining executives leaned back in their chairs, polished shoes tapping impatient rhythms beneath the table. Government insiders sat stiffly, eyes darting, lips pressed tight. Traoré didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He began with numbers, export volumes, declared revenues, missing tons. Then came the maps, satellite images of extraction sites, GPS logs of transport routes, discrepancies that couldn't be explained away. The executives shifted. One cleared his throat. "President Traoré, with all due respect, these figures are speculative. Our operations are fully compliant with international standards. Traoré didn't blink. Then you won't mind explaining why your declared output is half of what our independent audit found. A murmur rippled through the room. One official leaned forward, voice tight. These audits weren't sanctioned. They lack credibility. Traoré turned a page. They were conducted by our military intelligence. I trust them more than I trust men who've never set foot in the villages they're mining. The tension thickened. Accusations began to fly. Miscommunication, misinterpretation, political grandstanding. One executive accused Traoré of undermining investor confidence. Another warned of economic retaliation. But Traoré wasn't rattled. He leaned in, voice low and deliberate. You've taken billions from this land. And you've left us with broken roads and broken promises. You speak of confidence. I speak of justice. A government insider tried to deflect. We followed protocol. These contracts were approved years ago. Traoré's eyes narrowed. Then explain why 40 tons of gold were never logged. Never taxed. Never seen. Silence. It began quietly. A memo slipped under a door. A voice message left on a secure line. A former logistics officer, long retired, had seen something. A convoy that didn't match the manifest. A warehouse that wasn't on any map. He didn't want money. He wanted redemption. Traoré listened. Then he acted. He assembled a covert task force. Auditors, military analysts, forensic accountants. No press. No leaks. Just precision. They combed through years of export data, cross-referenced satellite imagery, and tracked GPS logs from mining trucks. Patterns emerged. Routes that looped through empty fields. Deliveries that vanished mid-transit. And one location that kept surfacing, a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, registered to a shell company with ties to a former minister. The team moved at dawn. Traoré rode with them, silent, focused. The convoy approached the warehouse, a squat, concrete structure surrounded by rusted fencing and silence. No guards, no cameras, just a padlocked gate and the weight of a nation's stolen future. They broke the lock. Inside, the air was stale. Dust hung like fog. And then, the light hit metal. Rows upon rows of gold bars. Stacked like bricks. Wrapped in faded tarps. 40 tons. Untouched. Unmarked. Unbelievable. The silence was deafening. Traoré stepped forward. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes scanned the room, each bar a testament to betrayal. Behind him, the task force stood frozen, some in awe, others in rage. Phones came out. Photos. Videos. Proof. Within hours, the footage hit the web. A single clip, Traoré standing before the gold, arms crossed, eyes burning, went viral. Hashtags erupted. Hashtag gold of the people. Hashtag Traoré truth. Hashtag Burkina rises. News outlets scrambled. Commentators gasped. The world watched. And the villains panicked. The former minister denied everything. The mining executives claimed ignorance. The shell company dissolved overnight. But the documents spoke louder. Wire transfers. Emails. Internal memos. The trail was airtight. One executive was caught trying to flee the country. Another was found shredding files in his office. A third went silent. His social media wiped. His phone disconnected. The unraveling had begun. But Traoré wasn't done. He held a press conference. No teleprompter. No script. Just truth. This gold was never lost, he said. It was hidden by those who believed Burkina Faso would never rise. Today we rise. The crowd roared. He named names. He showed receipts. He called for trials, audits, reparations. And he made one promise. Every ounce of that gold would be used for the people, schools, hospitals, infrastructure. No more foreign contracts. No more silence. The ripple effect was immediate. Youth groups mobilized. Artists painted murals of the warehouse. Poets wrote verses about the gold. Elders wept. Children cheered. The nation stirred. But beyond the borders, the shockwave spread. Other African nations began asking questions. Citizens demanded audits. Leaders felt the pressure. Traoré had lit a fuse, not just in Burkina Faso, but across a continent long plundered and long silenced. And yet, as the dust settled and the gold gleamed, one truth remained. This wasn't just about metal. It was about memory. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what was stolen, not just wealth, but dignity. Traoré knew the fight wasn't over. The warehouse was a victory, yes, but it was also a warning. Because if 40 tons could be hidden so easily, what else was buried? But the gold was just the beginning. It started with a single image. Ibrahim Traoré standing in front of the recovered gold, arms folded, eyes fierce. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Twitter lit up. TikTok stitched it into protest songs. Instagram flooded with artwork, Traoré drawn as a lion, a phoenix, a guardian of Africa's soul. The hashtags surged. Hashtag Traoré Truth. Hashtag Gold of the People. Hashtag Africa Awakens. Young Africans from Lagos to Nairobi posted videos of themselves saluting the screen. This is what leadership looks like, one said. He didn't just find gold. He found our voice. In universities, students debated the implications. In markets, vendors played the footage on loop. In homes, families watched with tears in their eyes. For once, the continent wasn't reacting to scandal. It was celebrating resistance. And the world took notice. International media scrambled to catch up. Headlines ranged from stunned admiration to veiled discomfort. Burkina Faso president uncovers massive gold cache. Anti-corruption crusade shakes West Africa. A new kind of African leader? Commentators speculated. Analysts recalculated. Diplomats whispered. In Paris, officials called emergency meetings. In Washington, aides drafted talking points. In Beijing, silence, the kind that signals recalibration. But in Ouagadougou, the people were loud. They marched. They danced. They demanded more. Traoré's name became a chant, a symbol, a movement, not just for Burkina Faso, but for every nation that had been told to wait, to obey, to accept less. And the pressure mounted. Other African leaders faced questions they couldn't dodge. Where is our gold? Who signed our contracts? Why haven't we audited our mines? Some tried to deflect. Others promised reforms. A few, quietly, began to panic. Because Traoré had done more than expose theft. He had exposed a blueprint for courage, for accountability, for change. And the youth weren't letting go. They organized panels, launched podcasts, wrote op-eds. They didn't just want gold. They wanted dignity. They wanted sovereignty. They wanted leaders who stood, not bowed. One viral post read, Traoré didn't just find gold. He reminded us that we are gold. The ripple effect reached far beyond Burkina Faso. The sun hung low over Ouagadougou as Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the podium. The crowd stretched beyond the square, spilling into streets, balconies, rooftops. Flags waved. Drums echoed. But when he raised his hand, silence fell. He looked out, not at a crowd, but at a nation reborn. This gold, he began, voice steady, does not belong to corporations. It does not belong to ministers. It does not belong to foreign banks or offshore accounts. He paused. This gold belongs to the people. A roar erupted, but Traoré waited. He wanted every word to land. For too long, we have watched our wealth leave in the hands of others. We have been told we are poor, while our soil glitters beneath their boots. We have been told to wait, to trust, to accept less. But today we say no. He spoke of dignity, not as a slogan, but as a right. He spoke of sovereignty, not as a theory, but as a promise. He spoke of justice, not as revenge, but as restoration. We are not beggars, he said. We are builders. We are not victims. We are visionaries. And we will no longer trade our future for their profit. The crowd was electric. Traoré didn't just speak to Burkina Faso. He spoke to every African nation that had been carved up, sold off, and silenced. He spoke to the youth who had never seen a leader stand tall. He spoke to the elders who remembered a time before the conviction. He announced a national gold trust. Every bar recovered would fund schools, clinics, clean water. No middlemen, no foreign oversight. Just the people, investing in themselves. And then he turned to the youth. You are not too young to lead. You are not too poor to dream. You are not too small to matter. The world has underestimated us for centuries. Let them. We will rise anyway. Social media lit up again. Clips of the speech were translated into Swahili, Arabic, French, Portuguese. Diaspora communities shared it with pride. Activists quoted it in rallies. Students printed it on posters. Traoré had done more than recover gold. He had recovered belief. But he didn't end with triumph. He ended with truth. This is not the end, he said. This is the beginning. Because the gold was just one theft. There are others. In our land. In our laws. In our minds. He looked out once more. The fight is far from over. Ibrahim Traoré finds 40 tons of missing gold. It's not just a headline. It's a declaration. A reminder that truth, when pursued with courage, can pierce through decades of silence and shine brighter than any stolen treasure. Traoré didn't just uncover gold. He uncovered a legacy of betrayal and chose to confront it head-on. In doing so, he reignited a fire across Africa and beyond. A fire of accountability, of pride, of possibility. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you question, reflect, or believe again, don't let it fade. Share it. Talk about it. Subscribe to this channel and stand with those who refuse to be silenced. Because this isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about every nation robbed of its voice. Every community denied its worth. Every person who's ever been told to settle for less. Traoré showed us what leadership looks like when it's rooted in truth. Now it's our turn to amplify, to organize, to demand better. This is not just Burkina Faso's story. It's ours. And the next chapter begins with you.